Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Harris, and I am the International Education Lead at the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. We're delighted to be supporting this year's Central Asia Trade Forum. Following last year's discussions on logistics and transport, we're back to lead a session looking particularly at the digitalization theme and how that's impacting on trade across Central Asia and across the whole region. As part of this, we've got some introductory videos so that you can meet some of our panelists. So I'm delighted today to introduce Khalizan Halid from Malaysia. And Khalizan is a really experienced logistics professional with a real passion about all things digital. And he's going to tell you in his own words a little bit about the sweet spots of digitalization and where he sees things going. So a very warm welcome, Khalizan.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. And thanks to CILT, the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport International, for inviting me to speak on this subject.
Yeah, we're delighted to have you, Khalizan. So perhaps just, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your companies and also what you're doing in Central Asia at the moment, work-wise?
I have been in the IT industry for over 30 years. We have seen how the technology evolved in coping with different situations that's happening in the world. And we have started from the days of the Apple II, IBM PC, all the way up to the cloud computing environment that we have right now with the AI and IR4 coming in. We have been involved in transforming a few organizations and industries in terms of digitalization of their operations. I'm attached to a few companies, and one of them is called the Inforium method. We have a method for managing projects, developing solution architectures that's suitable for everyone, because everybody needs a different approach to their own digitalization. That's what we are doing, and we have a partner in Kazakhstan who is involved in food industries and a few other things at the moment. Sorry.
Okay. Do you just want to say that? We'll give it a couple of, just say that sentence again. Just go back and we'll pick up from there.
We have a partner in Kazakhstan with a company there, and the company in Kazakhstan belonging to my partner is involved in the food industry and a few other things. Kazakhstan is a growing country, as you know.
Excellent. So we'll hear more about that on the panel discussion when we're talking to other leaders in the logistics world. Can I just ask from a personal perspective, why does digitalization and the whole technological advances matter to you?
We live in a very crowded planet. I think we should be feeling the impacts of that right now. The optimal level of population for the planet is actually around 2 billion people, and we have right now about 7 to 8 billion people. So that requires us, especially like, in the field of logistics, it really requires us to optimize our use of resources and the way we are depleting the planet's ability to survive, leading to global warming. And we are still involved in a lot of wasteful practices. And the way to go about doing that is to use information to coordinate our activities better. This is a matter of survival. So that's why I'm interested in how we digitalize our way forward in living on this planet.
No, that's really interesting, Khalizan, because of course it's not just about technology for its own sake, it's for a purpose. And sustainability of the planet, meeting the UN Sustainable Development Goals, carbon, yes, all of those things, digital's got a really big part to play. So hopefully, as we go through your vision in a minute, people will start to think about that link between environmental responsibility and how digitalization can actually fuse together and support that process. Excellent. Well, thank you for those couple of questions. What we're going to do now is we're going to hand over to Khalizan, and he's going to walk you through digitalization and his own kind of sweet spots that he sees are going on in the region and globally. So over to Khalizan.
Thank you, John. The title of my talk today is the digitalization in logistics, and where are the sweet spots that we have to hit in terms of making an impact in digitalizing the logistics operations. First of all, let us examine how we are impacted by COVID-19. See, this is our present world, our post-COVID world that has impacted a lot of our supply chain. And supply chain is very important because this is how we get goods to reach the consumers. And if we are not able to get goods into the hands of consumers where they are needed, when they are needed, in what form they are needed, we will face the prospect of having a world that is running into chaos. So the first question that we need to ask ourselves is, will the world return to what we once knew? Or will the world change forever from now on? There is a lack of consensus amongst the countries of the world in terms of where we are going to be at the end of this year, 2022, where we are going to be in the middle of next year, 2023, and so on. So it is very important in the first place for leaders of the world to be able to draw up a few scenarios of possible states of our world having faced this COVID. So you may have a possible state, for example, where we come back to the world, say something like in the year 2019 before we knew COVID. That could be one scenario. Another scenario is where we have massive and very fast mutations where we are going to be seriously locked down in our homes and life will be changed forever. And there could also be various shades of gray in between the two extremes. So again, I would like to call upon the leaders of the world and leaders of the industry, for example, like the Chartered Institute of Logistics, to draw up different scenarios of what's possible and then to discuss them and to be able to help others to appreciate like what's the probability that we are going to this scenario, what's the probability of going to that scenario. Now, as we know, through our experience of having faced this COVID pandemic for almost 2 years already, there had been disruptions to our supply chains. These disruptions were caused by lockdowns affecting manufacturing capabilities, and also border controls, preventing people from traveling across national borders. So this has an impact, for example, if you are involved in manufacturing and you need to place your own representatives in the manufacturer's plants, for example, because you need to control the quality of the products that's being manufactured to your specifications. So once you are not able to travel across borders, that will cause disruptions to your supply chain. And we are also seeing new and emerging patterns of consumption and patterns of supplies. Especially there has been a reprioritization of medical products. Obviously, for example, a lot of logistics is now prioritized towards delivering vaccines. And as we know, the rate of mutations and there's also a waning effectiveness in vaccines that you have received, so that if you have received your vaccines, say for example 8 months ago, it's time for you to get a booster shot. So there will be a lot of logistics involved in delivering these vaccines. Not also to mention to include medical supplies for people who have been affected by COVID and then are facing post-COVID syndromes, which also requires a lot of medical attention, and as well as different other medical requirements as we had before we had COVID. So medical supplies are seeing a reprioritization over there with all the requirements of delivering them. And we also have seeing a prioritization of protective materials like your PPEs and face masks. Originally, when we first came across this COVID malady, we had a shortage of PPEs and shortage of face masks all over the world. So logistics has an important role there in ensuring that these protective materials get across borders. And then there are also pharmaceuticals have picked up. People are prioritizing their household budgets into pharmaceuticals to keep themselves healthy, to improve their personal immunity capabilities to face COVID. And we are also seeing different consumption patterns or different buying patterns for food, for example, because people are now keeping more food at home in preparation for any possible emergencies. So you can see that people are, dairy products, for example, are disappearing faster from the shelves of supermarkets compared to before. So where before we have quite stable, quite even purchasing patterns for this food, right now, the moment that you place the foods on the shelves, and then they are immediately taken up. So this creates a new demand on logistics. Likewise for household goods like soap, detergent, shampoos, and definitely industrial products like industrial chemicals, for example, which is used in order to produce all these other downstream products. They are also facing new consumption patterns, and because of that, their response is also creating new supply patterns as well. And we are also seeing a resourcing of supplies. A good example was when Wuhan was first affected by COVID. There was a massive lockdown of Wuhan, and because of that, a lot of supplies throughout the world that is expected to come from Wuhan could not go out. And this caused people to start shifting and looking for supplies elsewhere from different suppliers. So, and there is also a different sense of protectionism for supplies as countries prioritize the supply of primary products for their own consumption instead of being exported to other countries. For example, raw material to produce PPEs and raw materials to produce masks, for example. So if a country requires PPEs and masks themselves, so there is a reprioritization there where the country would prefer not to export those products but to consume it within the country itself. Finally, because of all this, there is a reconfiguration of logistics themselves. For example, when passenger planes do not fly anymore or fly on a minimal basis, there is space, there's cargo space on the passenger planes that used to be available for carrying cargo, although those are passenger planes. But when the passenger planes do not fly, then the capacity is gone from the market. So suddenly you do not have the capacity to carry cargo anymore or as much as before on passenger planes. Because of that, the cargo is shifting over to shipping, to the shipping industry. But that is also putting a strain on the capacity of the ships themselves, as well as the storage capacity in ports before the goods get on the ships. We are also looking at logistics at the last mile in our own neighborhoods, where before we would all go out to grocery stores and we would all go out to supermarkets to buy what we need. But right now, because of the fear of COVID infection, we try to get out less than before. So we prefer now to ask for the goods to be delivered right to our doorsteps instead of us going out to buy those goods. So there is a shift there where the demand for logistics to do this last mile delivery has increased. And in a way that has also reduced the resources that's available for non-last mile logistics, intermediaries and all that. So this is again another area that is causing a reconfiguration of logistics to occur. Finally, before we could rely a lot on just-in-time production and manufacturing, where minimal amounts of storage and buffer stocks are maintained in order to reduce costs and holding costs of buffer stocks. But with the unpredictability that's coming to the logistic market, we are seeing that there is a need to maintain buffer stocks, whether it's at the intermediary level or whether it is at the consumer end level, in order to absorb shocks of changes in the, say, lockdowns or border controls without affecting supplies of those products. Now I'll go on to the next slide. So the other important thing that we are seeing, happening in the world right now is the rise of China. The rapid rise of China over the last decade, for example, has seen that China has become a major producer, especially of manufacturing products, to the entire world. Okay, so at least 25%, it could be 30%, 35%, at least 25% of the global consumption of anything in the world is now being met by China. So talking about Central Asia in particular, China's Belt and Roads Initiative has created or aims to create a greater, you can call it a greater China presence, involving the Central Asian countries as well. So the Belt and Roads Initiative involves two major portions. The first is the belts, which are the railroads and the highways that China is building across Asia in order to be able to send goods more efficiently to Europe countries, where a lot of the financial community is there, and the market is also there, the affluent market, to the Middle East, and to ports in Pakistan, to ports in Bangladesh, to Singapore, and ports in Malaysia, as well as inland roads via Moscow to Europe, and inland roads to Russia itself. So Russia also being a huge market. So we are seeing here that that the world, which has not been moving very fast in Asia now, is being propelled to move faster and to produce more from the area of China and Central Asia. So this is another important aspect that is affecting logistics, because the Belts and Roads Initiative is primarily driven by logistics, be it through the roads or through the belts, which are the roads on the ground, or through the naval passages, which are through the sea, which winds down to Southeast Asia, goes to India, and then goes to Suez Canal, connecting the route to Europe. With these two forces working together, the logistic industry is looking at digitalization as a means to maintain communication, coordination, and control. Because the logistic industry is very fragmented, as you know. You will have to move from primary producers over to suppliers, and then over to manufacturers, and then you have to hand it over to the storage people and shipping people, and then you go through multimodal deliveries, and you end up in your consumption or consumer country. So because it is a very fragmented market, there is a strong need to maintain communication, coordination, and control over the situation. So this is already a very popular move, and most logisticians understand that there is a need to harness big data, also to use AI to manage the complexity in orchestrating and achieving efficiency throughout all these operations. And we are seeing robotics being used slowly, gradually. For example, in China and also by Amazon, it has not really gathered mainstream level of activities yet, but people are looking at robots as one of the means of achieving the precision and achieving the efficiency needed by the industry. And of course, we have GPS to track the movements of products, your trucks, your parcels, to know where they are at any point of time. And there is also a lot of moves towards using blockchain in order to validate transactions, in order to secure them against manipulations, and in order to implement smart contracts in terms of releasing funds to those people involved in the entire supply chain. So all of this requires end-to-end integration, whether it is through the use of EDIs, or for those companies that could not afford to have a full-blown EDI, they are also looking at the use of custom web APIs to enable their software to talk to their supplier software or to their logistics software, because you need to be able to get all these software components to talk to one another. And what we are seeing here at the moment is that the change between all the parties involved in a particular supply chain is going through different states of readiness, because for example, your shipper could be fully automated, but then your supplier may not have that state of readiness to be fully automated. You may be partially automated yourself, and there's also the ability and willingness to invest in automation. So different people in the entire jigsaw puzzle is going through a different state of readiness. So because of that, the digitalization effort is going to go through a very complex process of weaving together a different web from time to time as people go through different states of readiness in order to talk to each other. At the same time, there's still a lot of manual procedures that is being used in the industry because of these different states of readiness, particularly by the authorities themselves. This is not only due to the ability of the technology to go for digitalization, but it's also the embracing of the practices. For example, at the moment, there is a lot of concern about counterfeiting products, or there's a lot of concern about where this product is going to go and to whom this product is going to be delivered and for what use is it going to be used for, especially with the rise of terrorism and what's happening in the region. So there will be a lot of still manual inspections involved, or interviews involved by the authorities themselves. So there will still be a lot of manual procedures included in the entire data integration. And because of this, we are still going to see a gradual transformation of the entire industry in order to have a full end-to-end integration achieved via digitalization. Now, we also have various degrees of effectiveness of digitalization. For example, if you were to change your supplier to a new one because suddenly your existing supplier could not ship over what you need because of certain constraints, COVID constraints. So there is also that trust level that you have created with your new supplier. I'm sure nobody would be willing to buy a lot of products from one particular supplier that you do not know yet. You do not know his capabilities or his commitment to deliver on time according to specifications. So still there is that trust element that needs to be built up that is still affecting the entire digitalization effort. And furthermore, because of the differences in the configuration from time to time, there is a need for systems to be adaptable and to be agile enough in order to be able to cater for changes in the configurations that's needed in terms of practices. Finally, in order to achieve a full end-to-end integration using big data or AI, there will need to be a data sharing agreement between the parties involved, and that's also involving governance, be it the government of the country itself or the governance policies of the organization in terms of data sharing with another party outside of the organization or outside of the nation. So these are still issues that needs to be ironed out in order to be able to achieve full digitalization of the industry. But at the same time, what we get from the World Economic Forum, for example, this is what they have to say. Logistics has introduced digital innovations at a slower pace than some other industries. Okay, maybe they're talking about the finance industry, for example, where digital banks are coming up and you have a lot of fintech players moving around. So logistics has not moved at that pace. Okay? And this slower rate of digital adoption brings enormous risk. Yes, of course, because logistics is the one that connects the components of supply chain. And we know that supply chains are important because that's where we get our goods in order to live a normal life from. So if we have a need for digital adoption and we don't move as fast as the need requires us, then there are enormous risks involved to our global society. And if ignored, this could be potentially catastrophic. This is what World Economic Forum says. If ignored, it could be potentially catastrophic for even the biggest established players in the business. So these are not just the small players at risk, but even the biggest and the most established players in the business is at risk because of the slow pace of innovations. And what are the numbers that we are talking about? Again, from the World Economic Forum, they say that there is 1.5 trillion US dollars of value at stake for logistic players. Okay, by the year 2025, there's 1.5 trillion value at stake for logistic players. And for the society itself, we are talking about 2.4 trillion US dollars worth of social benefits. If we fail to do this digital transformation properly. So to conclude, again, digitalization now is going through an evolutionary and gradual process of a mixture of manual and automation working together. And as we evolve by automating manual processes, there will be inevitably evolving workflows and evolving roles within those workflows. And we also need to be able to collaborate between different players. For example, one party may have excess capacity, excess storage space, or excess resources because of certain conditions that they are facing, that can work with another party in the same geographical area who can use the access that this person has. And this would lead to virtual organizations involving several different organizations or companies working together in collaboration, be it within the same geographical area or in the same supply chain over different geographical areas. And there are government to government and regulatory requirements that is also changing in face of whatever changes that we are facing now due to COVID. Where there are prioritization of export material. For example, government says don't sell this, or there are increase in regulatory aspects to make sure that products only go out to people that they're supposed to go out. Only the right products go out that's allowed to be going out. So there's still a lot of changes in the regulatory sector revolving around logistics. So in order to achieve all these, the main and most important thing at the moment is the exercise of proper leadership and management, where leadership helps industry players to see what is coming ahead of them, and management takes that and brings it home and say, okay, now let's coordinate our activities in order to be able to meet this kind of changes that we are going to be facing soon. So where have digital solutions been focusing on in the industry for right now? A lot of solutions are out there to improve the efficiency of the industry itself. There is a lot of wastage in the industry. For example, trucks that return home empty, or space within a container that is not used to carry something else. And this is because of coordination or miscoordination. It's not easy in the first place to coordinate all this. Or the routing of your trucks, for example. So there are a lot of software out there right now that helps companies to do all this to improve their efficiency. Especially in this industry, people are willing to pay premium prices in order to have faster deliveries. So if you miss this opportunity to deliver faster because of inefficiency in your operations, you're actually missing out on the premium that you could be gaining by faster delivery. And there are also companies at the moment who are looking at the integration between different systems, because different logistic players use different systems or different software, and there is a need for this software to be integrated together. Integration leads to the software, the workflow being able to be automated so that you don't have to reproduce your invoices, reproduce your delivery notes, manifest, but you would be able to automate those processes. And at the same time, reintegration will allow data to be shared across the industry. And with this sharing of data, there's different granularities of data that we can share. We can share totals, for example. We can share summary data. We can also share very detailed data. So there's a governance issues there that we still need to iron out. But integration will allow us to deploy big data gradually from sector to sector, or geographical areas to geographical areas, countries to countries, for example, or supply chains to supply chains, and to be able to use AI to digest this data and find out how we can improve our logistics better. There's a possibility that if we were to be able to fully use this data, we can improve the capabilities of logistics operations by anywhere between 50% to 100% more efficient. And that is really a huge figure that we are talking about. Now, there are two ways to go about doing digitalization, going digital for logistic companies. One way is to adopt a dedicated logistic software. Dedicated logistics software is very efficient and is highly customized to logistics operation. They are very good, but at the same time, they could also be expensive, and they could also be very constrained in terms of, say, for example, being able to be used together with another logistic partner is not yet ready for that sort of automation. So another way of doing that is to use configurable but more generic software. So for example, there is this software here that is called Soft Expert. This is just an example, but there's a few other examples here in the world, which is not specifically dedicated for the logistic industry, but it's being used for various other industries, mining, food production, automotive, electronics, chemical, for example. So it's highly configurable according to your own particular needs. And that's very important because it's highly configurable. It can cater for multi-organization in the sense that once you have installed the software, you can also allow your vendors or your partners to also use the same software together with you, and the information will be shared according to certain security privileges that you define. The software can be on the cloud, or the software can be installed on your own premise, and you can choose to purchase the software, or you can choose to rent the software. And 2,000 companies in over 30 countries are already using this software, including, for example, TNT, which is a logistics company, and a lot of manufacturers. So the software capability stretches from being able to do your strategic management. Here you could define your strategies for the next 3 years, 5 years, and monitor the achievement of those strategies. And you could also look at your performance KPIs, most of which is derived from operations that you do within the software itself. So these are not manually key-in KPIs, but these are calculated based on how you perform work with using the software. And then you could use it for workflows to manage projects, to manage tasks, everyday tasks, highlight tasks that is due or soon to be due or past due, manage risk, plan for the risk, and plan out for mitigation plans, hold meetings, conduct audits, follow up on your audit findings, uh, resolve issues discovered during audits, quality management, safety management, problem management, up to root cause analysis, and how to remove the root cause of issues that arise. And all this data is on one platform that you can analyze using the analytics capability. So there are a few other software that is also like this, that has Soft Expert has 30 over modules to do all these things, but there are also other software that you can link together and you can use across different organizations, so that you can coordinate your activities better. So where are the sweet spots in this, as a conclusion to our this presentation? First of all, leadership of countries, leadership of industries. For example, the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport themselves is holding on to a leadership position. So leadership should help their followers, or their citizens, to define what is the future scenario of the world. Okay, so it may not be one single scenario, it may be multiple scenarios. Then we can have dialogues and discussion about whether this scenario is more realistic than that scenario, because we are at the moment, all the industries in the world, and all the countries in the world are not addressing common targets of where we are going to be. So it's very important for us to know what is going to happen to the world by the beginning of 2022, in the middle of 2022, by the end of 2022, taking into account all the various mutations and possible mutations, supplies of medical products, of vaccinations, of vaccines, and those sort of things. So we need to define, leaders need to define what is the future scenarios, or what are the future scenarios going to be. And the management of logistics companies themselves need to understand what is the digital landscape going to look like. Okay, what are the major components of the digital solutions for logistic companies? Because there are a lot of solutions that a logistic company has to embrace in order to fully digitalize their operations. So you need to know what are these components that are needed to glue together the entire operations, and how important are they, because quite likely that you will not have enough resources to digitalize everything at once. So how do you prioritize which should go first? Where should the resources go to? And this requires, again, the scenario of what's going to happen in the future, so that management can plan out what needs to be rolled out when, and at what utilization of resources. It's also important that different players involved in supply chains. Again, this is about the importance of supply chains. So people from the financial industry, people from the legal industry, people from the logistic industries themselves, manufacturers and producers need to have constant dialogues with each other, because this is a totally new landscape that we are seeing. The COVID-19, as well as the rise of China, and the rise of the Asian countries, particularly Central Asia. This is giving out new scenarios that for us to handle. And so it's very important that we learn together in order to minimize mistakes. So we should learn from each other, we should have dialogues. So again, this is one area that the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport could play in order to initiate this kind of dialogues and sustain them. And in order for logistic companies to be able to digitalize themselves well, it's very important that you should engage mature solution architects. So how do you know which solution architect is mature enough to handle your particular operations? So the solution architect should be able to understand your business needs, should be able to understand your business problems, and at the same time, the same person, it has to be in the same brain. The same brain that understands your business needs must also understand the technology solutions that can be brought in order to address those needs. So solution architects will be able to advise you in terms of the resources that you need to put in terms of rollout programs, how you should prioritize what first, and should be able to discuss with you in language that you understand yourself on how to roll out these digital programs. So that is very important for logistic companies to engage mature solution architects. And in order to implement those programs, once you have identified them, you will also need a partner to the solution architect, which are mature project and program managers. So program managers is just a higher version of project managers. So when you transit from manual processes to higher degrees of automation, at the same time, you are handling very agile and very fluid circumstances and environments that you're working on in terms of lockdowns, in terms of opening of country borders, for example. So there's always a change in this in terms of resourcing your. So the project manager cannot be just your normal project manager who knows how to go from A to Z, but he must know how to branch out, when to go fast, when to go slow, what happens when you go slow without sacrificing pockets of opportunities that you have in order to go fast on certain things. So you need to have this sort of mature project managers with years of experience who knows how to juggle the bits and pieces of your digitalization journey in order to make it as painless and as smooth as possible. Finally, what's very important is the willingness to reinvest in transformation, because the logistics situation in the world right now creates a lot of opportunities for logistics company. So there's also opportunities to make money or to get bigger market penetration in terms of logistics. But there must also be a willingness to reinvest all that additional revenue into transforming the whole industry. This should also be supported by governments of the world to provide incentives for the logistic players where to invest in. So that this could be in the form of tax incentives, for example, or it could be in the form of investment incentives. And that should also be a willingness to participate in trade collaborations amongst logistic players, as well as together with manufacturers and groups representing consumers. And again, industry leadership has a very important role in this. So Chartered Institute of Logistics, as one of the industry leaders in logistics, can certainly take up these 6 roles here in order to initiate transformation of the logistic industry, which is very important for our supply chain in facing the unpredictability that we see caused by COVID, so that we can still sustain our human population and the green needs of the world. So with that, I would like to say thank you to all listeners for listening.
So thank you very much, Khalizan, for such a comprehensive journey through your world of digitalization and bringing on there some real issues that are affecting Kazakhstan, wider Central Asia, and bringing some of your international experience in there as well. So thank you so much. 2 quick questions for you. Now, I picked this up from your LinkedIn profile, and I picked up about how inclusivity is important to you, but you also said we can't digitalize everything at once. My key question is really about solution architecture. How can we make sure that how that is used is truly inclusive and really ends up helping the people it needs to help, rather than creating almost a dichotomy between technology racing ahead over here and then people that should feel the benefits almost being left behind? How do we deal with that?
Okay, this is the king of all questions. First of all, supply chains themselves ensure that goods reach us at the right time, in the right specification, in the right form, as well as at the right price. So if there is a shortage of goods in the market, this will lead to spiraling inflations and a lot of trouble. Yeah, and we are not just talking about casual goods like shirts, or you can go without new shirts. but it could be some medication, for example, something really important to you know, to save lives, or education material, that kind of stuff. So it's very important, first of all, that that the way the entire supply chain is configured allow for this sort of democratization. Okay, there should not be a lock up of a particular supply chain or a dominance of particular supply chain system. So you can dominate the whole system because your system is dominating the whole industry.
Mm.
You know, so that people cannot move without your system. So there must be, I mean, a body like United Nations, for example, got to make sure that this doesn't happen. You know, where people are over reliant on certain infrastructure that this infrastructure can be used to control distribution of goods.
Excellent. Yeah. No, thank you. So there's a real equity question there. I'm just going to follow up with a sub question there is, do you think the digitalization agenda has got a real role to play within humanitarian logistics? And do you think the pace of change for humanitarian is fast enough?
Definitely. What we are seeing right now, without even going into this, is that digitalization actually has increased the polarity between the haves and have-nots. Okay, technology is already conquering our life, and because of that, the financial aspects of our life. So you can see, I will not name the company, but you can see some companies emerging as, you know, you don't see this before, trillion-dollar companies. Now you see companies valued at $1 trillion. So a company, for example, used to take 40 years to become 1 trillion, has now taken only 2 years to become 2 trillion, for example. So there are a lot of other instances of companies like that, where you can, if you look at the Fortune 500 list of companies right now, the term data is the new oil, you can see that a lot of companies that's dealing with data is right up there at the top. And you can see a company like Exxon, for example, down there at the bottom of this whole thing. And that surprised me. You know, I thought oil companies are really rich because they have so much oil. But no, actually, it's not. It's those things that call data that you can even hold in your hands that actually bring up there. So it's creating a polarity in terms of distribution of wealth and work and all these kind of things. So digitalization is the way to go, whether you like it or not. But it's how we manage digitalization in order to create and maintain equitable societies.
Okay, so let's just final question now. That's about the you know, definitely about the fairness. You mentioned the haves and have-nots. The really big question is about sustainability. So, you know, being creative in technology, managing big data, it's all good stuff in its own right, and people, you know, spend their lives doing this stuff. But actually, if we come down to human impact, environmental responsibility, if we come down to making sure that our resources in our planet are used wisely, digital's got a key role to play in this, hasn't it?
Yes. One of our companies, I mean, this is another company that I'm involved in. We do drone work. So drone work is not just flying drones. It goes through a few steps, and at the end of the whole value chain is we process the data to do something. For example, we are able to predict water flow or landslides or what's underneath the ground by looking at the temperature of things on the ground. And we are also able to know how wind flows in a particular town, for example. So how it carries heat out of the town. So there are all these capabilities that we can do with data at the moment, and this can be used together. For example, pollution data at different times of the day, how much pollution is there in terms of smoke and in terms of chemicals in the air in particular area, and how they move throughout the day. So all these together with logistics data can be combined. But I think there's still a long way to go in terms of that. So it's something that
I mean, that's a
take.
conversation in its own right, isn't it? The ethical
Yes,
and environmental impact of how you choose to use the data rather than just collecting it and amassing it. That's for another day, but certainly for today, thank you so much for your insight into, again, the Central Asia dimension, bringing your personal as well as your professional views on the matter. And for those of you watching, if you want to hear more of Khalizan on the expert panel, please remember to check in on Wednesday, the 6th of October, when CILT will, alongside USAID and the Central Asia Trade Forum, will be presenting a special session devoted to transport and logistics and the impact of digitalization. So for now, it's bye-bye from Khalizan and myself, and thank you so much for checking in with us.
Thank you, John.